We will begin with Cosmographia demo. So Cosmographia is a very nice piece of software that we have been talking to you about during the week, that you can get from the naive side or from the ESA SPI service side in the shape of an executable. It's available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. But on top of downloading Cosmographia, with which you will be able to see a basic setup of the solar system bodies, you need to download a given mission a given mission configuration. It's a set of JSON files and the SPICE kernels. There's an online user guide. There's also a user guide in the shape of a PDF, and there's also some indications and slides in the ESA's SPICE service site for you to be guided through that. So maybe if you want to try to install it later on during the coffee break, and says that you have us around for us to solve you any doubts that you can have. So the first thing that I'm going to show is just a nice movie that it's a script, because it has scripting functionalities. For the current version, it's only available in the Mac and the Linux versions, not for Windows. And this is a script that Boris put together some time ago, which will actually show you the an overview of the Rosetta trajectory. Okay. So here we're pointing at the sun. Okay. This is Comet CG, and Rosetta, as you can see, going around. That was actually the deployment of the lander and the landing. So here's the orbits doing the pre-landing. Here's the beginning of the escort phase. As you can see, nice walls around the comet with these arcs. So in here, that was August 15th. That was perihelion. Now we go back to when we were getting closer to the comet. In this view, you can see when we actually kind of started escorting and mapping the comet. This is actually after the release. So the view we saw before was, so basically in this view we're looking at it's more or less the Terminator plane. Okay. Here you go. Let's take you through again perihelion. So just another view of the orbits. And in this case, we're looking at the direction of the comet from Rosetta, and this is again when we approached the comet. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to play around a little bit before we roll back and start from the basics again. So basically, I will take you to the Philae landing. Okay. So we've seen this script that has basically automatically done all those nice steps for us, but everything can be done manually, of course, needless to say. And in this case, for example, as you can see, I'm just controlling my viewpoint around Rosetta. So one thing that I can do is that I can, right now we are on the 3rd of August 2014, we're running at the real time rate, so to speak, and we can decrease that rate or increase that rate. So if I increase that rate, then you'll see. But in this case, for example, we're not, so we have this fixed camera, and one thing that we can do is that we can track the comet with the current view that we have. So in this case, we're tracking it, as you can see. We get it close, we'll accelerate, accelerate a little more. I want to get it easy. So one thing we can do, for example, is now jump to a certain point in time. So we could go to November the 12th, 2014. Date that might ring a bell. Actually, I will go. I will go one day before. So here we are. There's a lot of trajectories painted here. Anyway, I will decrease the rate, and at some point we should see Philae being separated from the spacecraft. See, there you go. It was separated here. Okay. So one thing we could do is that we could also load a sensor. So for example, we could load the Osiris camera field of view, for instance. Let's take it here, the narrow angle camera. Yeah, okay. So let's take something else. Maybe we can take the nav camera, which should have changed. Okay, so let's try with Alice, for instance. Yeah. Okay. So what I will do now is that I will go to Philae. Okay. So that I just loaded is the frustum of the Alice camera. And basically, what it's showing is the field of view at all times. We could either do that, or we can connect seeing the field of view only when we set it up by configuration during certain observations. So we can define start and stop times. Okay, so we're in Philae. We're gonna track the comet. Okay, and we're just gonna decrease the time rate. So this is the actual, the latest information that we have on the attitude during the descent. Okay, I'm just gonna unload that field. We have no data, so we have data gaps actually. As you can see here, Rosetta was kind of observing Philae. If we had loaded the Osiris NAC, we would see it trying to image it. So I'm just gonna unload that field of view. I'm gonna increase time. Okay. And here we're going to see the rebounds as we have them now. So here we go. And boom. We bounced. Now we're traveling across the comet. We could have a high resolution shape model, but we have this one right now. Okay, there we go. Then the final. So there we are. Landed on the comet. And this is what Philae was seeing. And one thing that we could do, we could try to find the Rosetta spacecraft. Okay, and we could again maybe we're in CG. Okay, it's the body in front of us. But we could try to track it with Philae and so on. Anyway, so what we're gonna do now is that we're gonna go back to the basics. So I'm gonna unload Rosetta. Okay. I'm going to reset to the default view that we have when we start cosmography. This is normal to the if I'm not mistaken. So there are several indicators here that we can activate or deactivate. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to deactivate the equatorial grid and the ecliptic that we can also see. So you will see a red line, which is, that line. That red line is the ecliptic, and we can combine that with the equatorial grid. Then I'm going to turn that off. Okay. So, for example, one thing that we could do is that we could go to Mars. Okay, so we just have to enter this object here. So go to Mars. And in here we can see a different amount of things which come because we are, this is not called cosmography, this is called SPICE Enhanced Cosmography. So what it does is that because we can load a set of SPICE kernels, we can visualize and obtain quantities that come directly from the SPICE kernels. So right now I'm not really going to do that, but what I'm going to show you is that if I right click on Mars, there's a list of things that I can do. And one thing that I can do is, for example, that I can add a body fixed frame Mars. Okay, and another thing that I could do, for example, is that I could also add the this is G2000, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in here you can see that indeed it doesn't really matter the center where I center the reference frame. So I'm centering here J2000 in Mars. And now you will see, for example, how Mars rotates with respect to J2000. Okay, you can see Phobos around there as well. So this is kind of helpful to understand this kind of geometry, and it's very nice as a learning experience, so to speak. So what we could do is that, for example, we could look opposite to this to the body fixed z-axis. Now we're looking from the pole, and we can activate that. And in this case, we are rotating with the so we are fixed to the body fixed frame. I could also there and change to an inertial frame. And in this case, I would see Mars rotating with respect to the inertial frame that I am fixed at. Okay. Another thing that I can do with natural bodies is that I can plot a latitude and longitude grid. Okay. Maybe if I want to check the certain given set of I don't know, landing sites or coordinates or whatever. And I can also add different other, let's say, quantities such as the inertial velocity direction, the sun direction, so we should have a vector pointing to the sun. So this is actually the subsolar point. Another thing that I could do, earth direction, I could also plot the terminator, so you can see here the terminator, okay? And then, as I just mentioned before, what we can do is that we can load a given configuration. So in this case, I'm going to start with Mars Express. So this is the configuration that you should have for a given mission. You've got all the configurations available for the ESA missions in the ESA Spy Service site, and you also have a set of configurations provided by Naive. So in this case, it comes on wheels. The only thing you have to do is that you have to make sure that in this file, you specify the location of your metakernel. And then make sure that your metakernel is loadable. So I can load MEX, and now MEX should be there. So as you can see, Mars Express is there. I'm gonna remove these vectors, okay? I want to clean up a little bit the view. So another thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove the planet orbits, and maybe I will also go here and decrease a bit the extra light. Okay, so this is actually how we will see it. Okay, and this is with some assistance in order to be able to see more features that are in the dark, so to speak. You can also modify the star brightness, although it's barely noticeable in this screen. So what else I'm going to do? Yeah, I want to remove the labels. No, because I want to see MEX. But I want to remove the star names, and should have also not planets. So I'm going to remove the planets. Okay. So now the MEX kernels are loaded. This is November 2014, right? So there you go. That's actually, let's say, real data. So that's loading the measured attitude and the reconstructed trajectory from that period of time. So one thing that I could do, for instance, is that I could plot the trajectory of MEX with respect to Mars. Okay, so I have to set Mars as center. And now, with MEX, I need to indicate that I'm plotting the trajectory in the observer frame. Okay, so now here we've got the trajectory of MEX. Different parameters that affect the trajectory, such as when does it fade away, how long am I seeing the trajectory for, those are things that you can configure in these JSON configuration files. Okay, they're not directly editable here in the interface. So now we can see. Okay. So for example, we can again we could, for example, Mars. Look opposite of this vector, and now I could use the politics frame is fine. You can see the revolution of the Mars Express orbit, maybe too fast. Okay. And now I can go to MEX. We've got a nice model for MEX. Of course. The Martian antenna, so okay. And again, I can, here's the beautiful thing. Now I also have available all the SPICE frames that are defined in the different MEX frames kernels. So, for example, I can see the MEX, you can see the spacecraft frame. Okay. I can see, for example, we can see some frame that has a CK, such as the solar arrays. So this will be, for example, the solar array plus Y frame. Okay, and right now, so what I'm going to do is that we are centered in MEX. I'm going to track Mars, and I'm going to make sure that this log frame is okay. Okay, so we go slower. You will be able to see how the solar arrays rotate with respect to the spacecraft mainframe. Let's see. It's a lot of things ongoing. So one thing that I can do, okay, I'm gonna remove this longitude latitude grid and the terminator. So I can also display basic quantities with Cosmographia. So for example, here in MEX, I can display the altitude of Mars. We've got it here, okay? So you'll see how it evolves. Or I could display the angle in between two vectors that I'm seeing here. So for example, I could look at the angle in between the z-axis of MEX. I have to choose it somehow. Okay, I'm in MEX. So here's the MEX Z spacecraft. I've clicked at it and it appears up here. Now I can select another vector, such as the z-axis of Mars, which is hidden somewhere, so maybe the y-axis of Mars. If I may. Don't let me.
They have to be centered on the same object.
Okay, so now what I can do is that in Mars, in MEX, sorry, I can display the IAU Mars frame. Okay, and actually what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove it from there, and maybe not to overload the frame, I'm going to remove the solar array plus Y frame. Okay, and now I select the z-axis of the spacecraft, and I right-click on the z-axis of Mars, and now I can display the angle to the MEX spacecraft z-axis, okay, in degrees and in coordinates. So there you go, you can see the evolution there. Okay, so more things that we can do. Let me just going to remove the IAU Mars frame. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, now I'm overloading the thing. So I'll just remove the IAU Mars frame. Okay, good. So I can load the sensor field of view, so they are defined in here. So for example, I could load the this construct, which is the HRC head field of view. Okay, so I got it there. As I mentioned before, I could link this sensor being displayed to a list of observations. Okay, and one thing that we could do now, just for fun, is that we could actually go to the PSA site. Okay, the user interface. Today I'm not going to dare looking at given just in case I don't find it. So again, I insist on Phobos. Okay. So we go to a search on Phobos, and we can choose maybe, well, we can limit it to HRC, and we can simply do a search with no further restriction. So we'll look for our favorite image, like this one here, for instance. So we gotta see the information of this image, 2016, August 7th, 1552. Give me a helping hand, I have very bad memory, so. That was 2016,
August 7th.
August 7, 15, and 52. 20. So indeed, we've got Phobos there. Let's see. Yeah. So instead of loading the head field of view, I'm going to load the SRC, which is actually the one that's going to give us the simulation of that observation. So again, with there's other controls that I can do for the cameras, such that with the arrows of the keyboard, I can just rotate around my point of view. So in this case, I'm gonna go and choose the sensor, because it's another object that it's now that I can select here, and I will show the bore side of the vector, which should be almost co-aligned to the Mars Express axis. I'm not gonna display the Mars Express axis anymore. Okay. Only to get confused. Okay. Now, one thing we can do is that we can look along this vector. And now, if I get close, you can imagine what we're going to see, right? So it's quite a. We could have chosen. So this we could choose this sensor field of view to intersect with Phobos actually. So now what I'm going to do is that that's correct. And this time, oops. Here we go. Was too fast. Not too slow. So let's see. There we are. Okay, so more or less that's you get the idea. Okay, so this is just a nice way to check the geometry of a given observation, because now, well, it's kind of basic, no, but now I can have an idea on what was the context of this observation by simply looking at Mars, for example. Mars. Can I go to Mars? Can I go to Mars? Okay. Mars.
Point.
I want me to go to Mars.
It's very close to Mars. It has nowhere to go.
Okay. So in here you can get like an idea of the context of this particular observation. Okay. And then another thing that I can do, of course, is that, okay, now I'm loading Mars Express data, but I could also load, for this very same scenario, I could go to, for instance, I could also load ExoMars data in the same, for the same scenario. So here, we load the operational scenario, that is using the operational kernels. Coding. No data for the lander, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go to DGO. It's right on the opposite side. Okay, so here we got the DGO model. So again, another thing that I can do now here is that I could set Mars as center and display the DGO Okay? And now we can actually see this scenario in which we have two speech paths. Okay, so this way. And well, we got this nice scenario here. And again, all the things that I've shown for next week we do for PGO. And well, we can do all sorts of things. Another thing that I wanted to show is that we have different options for, for instance, if I were in Mars and I set Mars as center, what I can do is that I can go here in camera and I can jump to a particular point of view. So in such case, for instance, I want to be looking at the pole again, maybe 50,000 kilometers. And I want to be looking at this direction. Okay. To the other direction. Can you give me a hand, please?
Yes, so you were doing everything correct except you put 10 in the X. You need 0 in the X for a look direction. Yeah, 0 and minus 1.
Okay.
And this should work. Oh yeah.
So there we go. Okay, now we can set. Okay, so how am I doing time-wise? 2 minutes to go. Is it correct? Good. See, we have a.
We've got enough time, so
Okay.
what?
So what else can we show? What else can we show? Any suggestions? That's my, well, there's another nicety which is barely used, but if you could put these on a 3D screen, one a commercial 3D screen, and then you can choose the stereo mode. So if you do it like this, you will see 3D in the screen. We've tried it. It's not perfect, but it works really well. And you can also set it up like an anagraph. So if you have simple 3D glasses, you can also have a little glimpse of a 3D. So that's really nice as well. So I'm going to disable all that. And there's several other things, graphic things that we can set up on and off, like the Milky Way. Actually, what is not here, but will be there in the next version, is the self-shadowing of objects, such as for 67P, for the comet, in which you could see the comet shadowing itself. Okay.
How about the landmark labels?
Okay. So we can look at the landmark labels. So surface feature labels. No, that's not a thing. So this gives us predefined surface features. And for example, we've got, you meant that? You meant that?
Yeah, the surface feature.
Okay, okay.
Zoom in a little bit.
Zoom in, okay, so we can see different features. Let's look for Planum, Olympia. So now I'm really showing my poor knowledge of the Martian surface. What is that? Show you. Okay. We cannot really. Can we switch with?
No.
No. Okay, so another thing that could be nice to show is an observation being made. So I'm gonna dare to do this.
How about the footprint?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show. So the thing is that, okay, I'm gonna dare to do this, and it's gonna be wrong, okay, but then I'm gonna debug, and then you will see how I actually debug cosmography. Okay. So now I'm gonna load JUICE. Okay.
Marcos, can you you show us where you download this information from the database?
Sorry?
Can you show us where to download this information? From Mix, from Choose, from...
Where to load information?
Where to download it? And when?
Well, it's rather, so you can do, for example, SPICE, ESA, Cosmographia, and I'm sure that the first result we're going to get is linked to the site. And in here, you've got the loads, the red link to download the executables, and then here you've got the mission configurations. So you can either browse it or download the zip package. Okay, for different missions. There's some indications here. There's some slides here. Okay, so here's some indications on how to configure it. Some slides here on how to use it. Okay, and more importantly, you've got the online guide in here as well, which is very complete and tells you how to create configuration files and well, basically all the capabilities that you need. And of course, you can always go to the Naive site, in which they have the latest information available and some particular downloads to obtain the package, to obtain the catalog file for the different missions that they support. Okay, so the installation is not obvious, so to speak, but it's not rocket science either. Okay, it might take you some minutes, but especially now that you're very handy with loading metakernels and making sure that you load the appropriate kernel, then it makes a big difference for those users who are not educated on doing that. Okay, so for the let's see if I can show the footprint. So maybe what I can do, not to put myself at risk, is to load ExoMars again, and actually I'm going to show you how we do that. Okay, so you've got TGO here. Is there a way, Boris, in which I can reset the trajectories?
To do what?
No, to clean out the trajectories.
Well, you have to change the catalog file that sets for how long trajectories are plotted.
Okay.
In your case, you asked for many revolutions and you got many revolutions.
Okay, we'll just leave it like that. So if I now go to TGO and I load a sensor, okay, for instance, I can load, let's load ACS Terminal. Okay. So we got, this is the model of the field of view of ACS. As you can see, it's a cone, it's a conical field of view with a footprint that's a circle. So if I choose TGO, okay, oops, what have I done? Okay, so I'll go back to photos, let me roll back. I'll go here, and now I'm going to go back to TGO. Okay. So back again. Okay. So basically, if I run here, you see that we are not producing any footprint for this particular observation, so to speak. So in order to do that, I have to activate it via configuration, and I will now expose you to the configuration. Okay. So just a second, so you can also get a glimpse. Okay, so here we go. No, it's going to be dark again. So, for example, the sensors configuration files look like this. I had loaded ACS, what was it? ACS Terminal, yes. Okay, so we go here. ACS Nadir Mars. So the thing that I can do, okay, is that this is how the JSON file for this sensor looks like. There's this keyword here that says only visible during observations, and I would have to set up this to true. Okay. But now I need to define an observation for this given sensor. Okay. So I need to get an observation from somewhere to copy it, some in Rosetta, for example. I'll take this one. Okay, I'm gonna copy it here. Probably should change the file name. So an observation looks like this. At the end, it's simply a list of time interval and a list of times for which the field of view will be activated. So in this case, we'll keep that observation name. We'll choose time period in which we are located here. So for example, from the 8th to the 10th of May. Okay, so we're going to edit this. We're going to go from the 8th to the 10th of May, 2018. For example, is Mars. Okay, so the sensor is DGO ACS 30 NAT.
Mark,
Yes,
you need to put Mars with capital M and lowercase everything.
correct.
Cosmography is sensitive to case.
Okay. And so this is the, let's say, the global start and end time of this particular configuration file, and then the observation. So we can put up a list of observations is put in here. So in this case, I'm simply going to create one observation here, or maybe I can split it in two, so you'll be able to see. So for example, we're going to have one from 1 to 6, and I can have another one on the 9, again from 1 to 6. We choose a footprint color, so we have footprint opacity, some other factors, and fill in, it's just a graphical thing such that we can, I think it's just that we can only see the contour of the footprint or it being filled. Correct?
Correct.
So we're going to put that true, for example. Okay, so now we have this observation that has a completely wrong name, anyway. And we have the sensor in which we have set it to true for only visible during observations. So we do now have to load the sensor again for it to be true only during observations. Okay, so as you can see now, we don't see the field of view. But if we load the observation, and we move forward in time, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to track track Mars. That's actually let's start. Remember the time of the observations that I set. Okay, let me just try to track Mars.
Mark,
Yes?
I think you need to make your frequency slightly smaller because you made observations footprints every 200 seconds. So they're there, but there's spots all over the place instead of making a nice trail.
So it's, let's put it to 5.
Yes. And make intervals smaller because it will be too many spots to plot and cosmography will be going very slowly.
So let's put it like this.
That's called communal debugging.
Collaboration between the entities. Okay, but now to unload all this, maybe I should reset them.
No, just unload this catalog that you loaded before and load it again,
So we load it again.
right? And go to the time of one observation so you don't have to. Yeah. So this is where cosmography isn't very efficient, because if you want to plot a lot of things, it will try to do it for you, but the animation speed will go down drastically. So shorter time intervals help. Plotting this over 2 hours or 6 hours will be very compute intensive.
So May 8, 1. Okay, so now we can see the start of the observation and the footprint.
And time rate, yeah. Good.
So 5 seconds,
Yes.
another one, 5 seconds, another one. Okay. And the nice thing is that we can also now extract information from this footprint.
Can you make it go a little faster so we can see how it makes the trail? There you go. That's a sewing machine.
Okay, so now we can also extract information actually from these footprints. I need to, yeah. That's a bit cumbersome. Okay. So I think that in the description you've got the some characteristics of this observation, and also this. That's right. But I can extract information from the footprint itself. I should be able to choose it. Or is am I
No, you can't, because it's a single entity in Cosmographia. It won't allow you to do it for a single spot.
Okay, so there you go. Of course, as you can see, there's a lot of potential on making this an automated process for actual observations. That is something that we still have not been able to look at. Okay, something else? Anything you would like to see? No? We move to the dynamic frames?
One question.
Yes?
For example, if you made some animation for a particular set of time, and we would like to export that animation as a movie,
Oh yeah,
so that we can use it in our PowerPoint.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, Cosmography has the capability of actually taking screenshots and recording videos. I have to say that the video recording capability, again, it's very GPU consuming, I assume, and it's quite slow. So, although you can do it from Cosmographia, so you can save the video and so on, like I could show you. Okay, and now it's recording, and as you can see here, there's this indication. And if I just click escape, no, how was it? I actually never do it like this anymore. There was a hot. Okay, so it's the 1R, then it stops. But in general, I prefer to use an independent application that will record my screen. I find that more efficient, actually. You also have the option of taking saving screenshots, but of course you can also do that with your own system. And a thing that I didn't mention, which is also really interesting, is that you can copy a state in the clipboard, okay, and then you can actually start running Cosmographia from the command line, and if you put this state as an option, when you start cosmography, it will take you to this particular state. Although it will not have the ExoMars scenario loaded. Okay.
Well, you can load scenario by providing catalog file names on the command line as well.
So as you can see, I never do it. But yeah, and this option is available both in Windows and in Unix Mac. The other scripting abilities, the one that I've shown you before with the Rosetta directory, is only available for Mac and for Unix environments in the current release. And the scripting, it's done with Python, and it's let's say that the syntax used is fairly easy and direct. So you don't even have to be a Python expert to be able to do some scripting with cosmography. So I can actually show you how it looks like. So it looks like something like this. Display, set time and pause, set camera to, display note, set time rate. So it's just a list of instructions. Nothing really fancy or so. Although you can do as well anything you want. Something else?
So, for instance, the service features of Mars are part of the generic kernels?
No.
Or
No.
that's something you would define with JSON?
So there's a set of pre-built bodies, like most of the natural bodies of the solar system. There's actually also, well, you can see them here, for example. There's also other add-ons that come on wheels as well, like the ISS and Hubble. But my understanding is that they do not use SPICE data. They use the capability of cosmography to propagate two-line elements, I believe, and they have a two-line element from some time ago. And there's other things that come on wheels, like all these things. So actually, I haven't even tried the satellite collision thing. But if we went to the Earth, okay, and we would turn on the ISS and Hubble. So we'll see it here. Disappeared. It's so close. So if I go to the ISS, you'll see now that there's even a 3D model over for it. There you go. But in principle, so the SPICE enhanced part is that you can actually load your. So, for example, if you load most up to date or more up to date ephemeris of Mars, or maybe the ones that you're using on your mission, and you load it as part of the SPICE kernel dataset, that will actually update the trajectory of Mars that is in cosmography. Correct?
What do you?
Boris?
Mark, I missed the first part of your
No,
question.
so if I load, so the ephemeris of Mars come embedded with Cosmographia. I don't think it's using SPICE for that.
It is using SPICE.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Cosmographia is using SPICE for everything that you see in the solar system by default. But you can change this behavior if you go to settings, that gears side, in the gears on a toolbar. And I believe in a interface, it can turn on and off SPICE-driven bodies. So if you see, if you turn it off, then SPICE is no longer used for natural bodies. It used built-in models, which are Keplerian orbits or something like that.
So can you see the difference with the Earth?
Yes, so it jumps because now all locations changed and come from much lower precision data. We don't recommend you to do it, but sometimes people do it for performance reasons. Of course, you lose all of your spacecraft stuff that comes from SPICE.
So yeah, I'm also learning new things. Okay, something else? Otherwise we will move forward to an also very exciting subject.